Hey everyone. So I just got finished grading the DBQs from October, and I wanted to go over some of the basics that we need to get down on this. So just to before I get into the thinking skills, I'll just go over some of the data here, right? So in terms of like the average score within each category, right? The average, you can get a maximum of a 1 here for thesis, a 1 here for contextualization, a 3, a 2, a 2, and a 1 for complexity. So looking at our biggest areas of opportunity, I think thesis and claim is going to be our biggest one because I need you guys to be able to set up the arguments accurately. And I think one of the confusions that we had was that guys were focusing on the wrong period. So uh, in the previous document or in the DBQ, you guys were talking about the Federalists versus Anti-Federalists and the ratification of the Constitution, and that was not represented in the documents. What we were more talking about was the Washington and Adams administrations, and talking about how that led to the formation of political parties. Um, I was happy to see more contextualization, and you guys certainly could have used that anti-federalist federalist debate leading into it. But again, the meat of it needs to be the Federalists versus the Democratic Republicans. You guys have always scored well with use of evidence because I think we have a habit of asking you to use evidence. However, many of you are directly quoting your documents, and you need to stop doing that. Right? Directly quoting is not going to get you anything, and the thing that you really need to do is summarize. You need to summarize or paraphrase what's being said in the text. That is going to work better for you. And if you're having difficulty paraphrasing, that's the work that we're doing in a lot of our documents. So digging into it and seeking to understand is going to be important. And then connecting it back to the argument. Outside evidence, some people were using this, some people weren't. I think it's crucial that you guys start connecting the work that we do outside of outside of class and within class to the documents that come in during the DBQs. And analysis and reasoning, some of you guys are making some honest attempts at this. However, remember that it needs to actually, like, you can't just say the audience is to the people, right? There needs to be some connection or beyond that, right? So we're going to, and complexity is one that we have, I haven't taught you guys to do yet, but this is something that it's crucial for making connections between historical events. So I want to walk through this document here. This is the AP Thinking Historical Skills. So they published something called the CED. This is the course and exam description from College Board. These are the skills that I bake into my lessons and that are represented in the tasks that you get from College Board and elsewhere. So I want to talk about what each of these mean and why they're relevant to your success on the DBQ. So the first one, and foundationally, is developments and processes. This is your content knowledge. This is the identifications. This is picking up the developments that we talk about in class. This is the Khan Academy videos and documents that you get there. Okay, so this is foundational. And I think that this is where we're struggling the most, is because not many of you are building up that enough historical content to be able to come into the DBQ with an appropriate amount of background knowledge to actually apply this very, just attach the documents to ideas and run. Sourcing information. So this would be our HIP. So this is where you guys would need to, utilize how the audiences, how the sources, purpose, historical setting, all of that stuff is relevant to the document, right? And it needs to be a claim. Like, you can't just say the Washington's farewell address came at the end of his administration. Well, sure, yeah, it did, but what's relevant about that? What make connections to how that actually matters in understanding the document. Contextualization is this broader skill is really important for bringing your historical knowledge just to make sense of the thesis, right? The debate I gave you was over the formation of political parties. Well, some of you were talking very generically about political parties. Political parties are there to put people in power. Well, yeah, but what is it historically that gets us to this point? And some of you were mentioning debates over ideas in the Constitution, right? That's getting there, right? That's getting there. But we want to actually establish, so what are some relevant things? So the anti-federalists versus federalists is extremely relevant, because those are the seeds that are sown for the political debates. You can talk about, one student very excellently gave a broad brush of the issues and said, the debates over the intervention in the French Revolution, and about the attempt at forming a growing economy, right? And they talked about during the event. If you want, so you can talk about these things that took place before, right? Sort of the philosophical differences that took place before, in order to lead into where we're going, right? That's going to be, you just have to look at maybe the words that are in the prompt and say, okay, well, if we're talking about, federalists, well, what's a federalist? Where does a federalist come from, right? So there, we'll go. We're going to look at a DBQ prompt and documents in this video, and you're going to see me doing this, right? I'm going to try and walk you guys through this. Making connections. So this is number 5, is really about. I think about this in terms of linking documents together. Some students were trying to make a connection between the Hamilton document, which advocates for manufacturing, and Jefferson's document, which tries to oppose the national bank. There's a connection there, which is that what is the role of government in fostering the growing economy? And they have differing ideas about that. So the connection's there, but you guys just have to actually make that connection clear in your writing, which then loops back to your argument. And skill 6 argumentation is everything that the DBQ prompt asks you, or the DBQ rubric asks you to do. Making a historically defensible claim is a thesis. Support an argument using specific and relevant evidence. Those are your use of evidence, and then there's analysis there. So all of this stuff is sort of baked into the DBQ, and that's why this is such a central task that I want you guys to master. Okay, so we're going to take a look and talk about a DBQ prompt. So this is a DBQ prompt from, there's a website called apprend.io. I'll put it here. .io, and this is like an excellent resource for getting some clues about what the DBQ is looking for, and other content. It gives you a whole bunch of stuff. So I recommend checking that out for AP US History. So this says, very similar in the style that I gave you. It says, evaluate the relative importance of the different factors that caused the movement for American independence between 1754 and 1776. In your response, consider both the underlying forces and specific events that contributed to the growing support for independence. So this is a 7-document DBQ. So I'm going to nix 2 of them just to bring in the more style that we're working with in class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through how to do this DBQ, getting all the points so that you guys can have a clear sense about what to do, right? And like where you're going to need to do the work, and where you can, like, I know some of you are writing extremely well. Some of you have very clear voices in your writing, but it's just a matter of doing the thing that's asked on the rubric and making those connections. So now, even before I get to the task itself, right? Evaluate the relevant important for different factors that cause. So as an AP US history student, I should know already what caused the American independence. There's 2 big things, right? Taxation without representation, right? And Enlightenment ideas. There's more, but those at least should stand out to you, right? Those should stand out to you. And we're going to talk more about the different documents represent different factors, but we're going to look at how we can bake those into a DBQ. So Let's go through the documents here to make sure that you guys are getting a proper understanding of the documents. So document 1, this is the join or die cartoon. So Benjamin Franklin's making an argument that the colonies need to bind together, but the context is super important here. This is the Albany Plan of Union. And if you go dig it back into it, this was a proposal, a failed, I'm writing that, I can't even see what I'm writing, a failed proposal in an attempt to, right? So what was the purpose of the Albany Plan? Protection. In order to assist, so that colonies would assist each other for protection, right? So this, think about the issues during the French and Indian War. They were looking to get territory out west, and Benjamin Franklin's like, okay, if we're going to be this gigantic set of things, these colonies, then we need to bind together for our own self-protection, right? Assist one another, and this was one of the first ideas towards unity. So document 2, Virginia House of Burgesses, Virginia resolves 1765. So the French and Indian War ends in 1763. 1765, what's relevant here? The taxes placed on the colonies, right? So historical context. Document 3. So even I haven't read the document, right? And I get the Virginia resolves. If you know what they are already, like, you don't even need to do the work of much of the reading of the document, right? So document 3, and like, if you think that that's what's the word? If it's kind of crazy to know all of these documents, like, yeah, I agree. Like, I'm not going to know every document that's on this list, but Virginia Resolve shows up a lot, right? And it should have been something that was covered in much of the content that you had seen during this lesson. So 1765, at least I would know the context, right? The Stamp Act is passed. So you can take a moment and read it. You can pause the video and I'll talk about it. All right, so basically this is about asserting their own right, the colony's own right to tax, right? So what does this feed into? Taxation without representation, right? That they are the ones that should be taxing themselves, okay? Any person shall, by speaking or writing, maintain that generally sentiments colony have any right to power imposed. Yeah, so here it's basically saying if you oppose this body's right to impose taxes, then you are an enemy to the colony. Wow. So this document is, again, this is not a document that you would or anybody should know. They give you these obscure ones on purpose because you have to know, first of all, that George Washington, right? You have to know who he is, right? He comes out of the French Indian War, eventually becomes the military commander for the colonies. And the date is relevant here too, right? Because they're starting to tax more product on the colonies. So pause the video, read it, and then come in and we'll talk about what's happening here. Okay, this is an example of something that you need to know. Like, I think if you just try to figure it out from what's happening in the document, I think you're not going to get it. You have to know what's going on beforehand, right? There was this, and I might have talked about it in class. There's this famous baseball study, and or they called it the baseball study. And what it was they tested the comprehension of students they gave them a passage about baseball, and they tested students who were really they can read, they had really good reading comprehension skills, and who didn't know about baseball. They had students who were at low comprehension skills who knew a lot about baseball. And they basically, the thesis of it, or the main argument was that if you are a student who has background knowledge but not very good comprehension skills, you're going to do better, right? So even if you read this document and it's looking like, it's looking like Greek, if you have the content behind you, it's going to assist you, right? So that's going to be key. So where we are with this document is that Britain is imposing taxes on the colonies, which is what's going to happen is that colonies are going to reduce their purchasing of those British colonies, of those British goods. So like, let's say, for example, like hypothetically tea, right? So if Britain raised taxes on tea, then the colonies are just going to buy less British tea. And so in the end, the raising taxes on tea in order to raise money actually hurts British tea companies. So where then is the utility for these restrictions, right? Who benefits from having these restrictions on tea? So, or any other product, right? So there is, the basic argument here is that the taxation policies imposed by Great Britain will actually hurt themselves. Okay, again, the context matters, right? This is the new taxes placed on colonies. Okay, so it says in the document here that can we well be dispensed with whilst our necessaries of life are mostly to be had within ourselves. So outside information. Where is it that the colonies are finding products outside of the British system? Smuggling. That's number one. Number two is something called the homespun movement. Right? This is a movement which people made their own shirts and products, and they made their own stuff in order to protest the forced purchase of British goods. So the other outside information here that's relevant is that this is mercantilism, right? That there's this forced purchase and sale of British colonial goods, right? Okay, Samuel Adams, The Right of the Colonists, 1772. You can pause the video and we'll talk about it. All right, so here is where we're starting to see a tipping point, right? The tipping point here is that we have the rights of Englishmen, right? We have that they're asserting, so this is document 4, that colonists are asserting their rights as Englishmen to gain representation. Okay, now this is different from document 2, right? And document 2 says, hey, we're our own thing and we need to be able to run ourselves, or we're the only persons. And now in 1772, they're like, we're British colonists. Hey, and so now they want to identify as British colonists in order to assert for their rights. So both are saying that they don't want taxes, right? Both are making this claim to taxation without representation, but it's being done in a different way, right? I'm going to skip over document 5. I'll get to document 6 here. Document 6 will be my document. I'll skip over the Declaration of Independence. Who needs that, right? Document 5. So Common Sense, Thomas Paine. Paine is spelled wrong here. I think that this is a document that you at least need to know the basics of. So Of course, he's arguing for independence, but what are the arguments? And so, pause the video and see if you can find what argument he's making here. Okay, so we have Enlightenment ideas. And what's the Enlightenment idea that's here? The Enlightenment idea is going to be that of something called hereditary privilege. Hereditary privilege. So if you know anything about kings or whatever, you know that it's based on birth. So if you're born into a royal family, you then become a part of the royal system. Whereas in what we call popular government or representative government, we elect people, we choose people to be our representatives. So he's basically saying that there's no reason why, when I say no reason, meaning like it's not reasonable, it doesn't make sense to have somebody inherit power. So this is an Enlightenment idea that there's this idea that we shouldn't even be attached to anybody, even if no matter if there was a king in the colonists, there really wouldn't be a purpose to having. It's not a rational government. It's not a good way to set up government. So let's go to the top here. Go back to the prompt. Evaluate the relative importance of the different factors that cause the movement for American independence, right? So we have to now make a claim about the relative factors, right? And we have different routes and avenues that we can take. So I could say that it's only, mainly due to the Enlightenment ideas. Mainly due to to taxation without representation. I could say that it's a combination of Enlightenment ideas and taxation without representation. So I think some of you were actually including the language of the relative importance of the different factors. Like, no, like you just need to make a claim about which one or how you would weigh out these different factors. Spelled my name wrong. So again, when we look at this, it's more. So you can start rephrasing it. You could say the main causes of the movement for American independence were the what do you say? The Enlightenment were the use of Enlightenment ideas and the taxation. How do I say that? And the movement. I don't want to say movement again. The main causes of the movement for American independence were the use of Enlightenment ideas and the resistance against taxation. Okay, so some of you were incredibly vague, right? You said the main causes, you would have said something like the main causes of American independence were new ideas and taxes, right? So again, I'm saying resistance against taxation, right? You need to be specific in your thesis. Okay. So how I would group these documents. So grouping these documents would be pretty easy. I'm going to leave out the Albany plan, and I'm going to incorporate I'm going to have the taxation without representation, and I'm going to have the Enlightenment ideas. So I'm going to have document 2 and document 4 together, right? And then I'm going to have document 2 and 4, and document 1. Oh, sorry, no, 4 and 4 and Where was it? This Enlightenment ideas. Oh, it was in document. I'm going to say document 5, definitely. And asserting the rights to do the policies actually hurt themselves. Stand back. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put documents 2 and 3 together in terms of like the resistance, and then document 4 and 5. 4 and 5. So context. So what's the context here? Is that so this is, I'm actually going to start my essay with context. So following the French and Indian War, the relationship between the American colonies and Great Britain changed dramatically. Given the costs of the war, Britain was now enforcing new tax policies in order to cover the cost, in order to raise enough revenue. Acts like the Stamp Act and Townshend Acts were specifically designed to raise money. Okay, and I can, if I want to throw this, while the Sugar Act and Tea Act reinforced trade restrictions, or enforced, or I could say promoted British colonial trade. Okay. All right. So now I got my context set up. The next thing I want to do is have my thesis. I gotta, but if you notice that if I just put this here, it like here it doesn't talk about independence at all, right? So I need to include that. So I'd say, given these new restrictions, these new policies placed on the colonists, a movement towards independence grew from grew immediately after the French and Indian War. Okay, now I can put my thesis in. Done. Okay, so document 2. So now I'm gonna, I saw some students doing really well with this. You have a topic sentence which binds the 2 documents together. So document 2 and document 3. So document 2. The policy of taxation, the policy of enforcing new taxes on to the colonists was met with resistance on 2 accounts. In the Virginia resolves, the colonies, the colony argues that only the colony itself has the right to levy taxes on its citizens. And I put Doc 2. Virginia resolves, and spelling all these things wrong. Doc 2. Okay. And so there, I'm going to say, so I can, and then I'm going to make a context here, right? Due to the policy, the unofficial policy of salutary neglect that took place before the French and Indian War, the Virginians were much like the other colonists, were not accustomed to taxes being imposed on them without their consent. Okay, so this declaration served as a motivate. So I just want to connect it back to the prompt. This declaration served as a motivator to encourage independence due to its history of being left alone by Britain in the years previous. Sorry. Okay, so next, wrong it's. Okay, so additionally, right, colonists felt that these taxes would inevitably backfire, right? So as Washington explains in his letter, Doc 3, he argues that the increase in taxes would lead colonists to avoid purchasing British goods. Because of the increase in taxes will lead to colonists to avoid British goods. Okay, so that's just a use of document. So, so I said I had some relevant context here. Okay, he was correct in his analysis because there were movements, like the homespun movement, which led colonists, which promoted colonists making their own products as a boycott a boycott of British goods. Okay. Okay. So now what I want to do is take the two, because I discussed each document in different. I discussed each document. Now I want to connect them together into a cohesive part, right? Overall, these documents represent the resistance to British colonial tax policies, which would ultimately lead towards political independence. Okay, so next up, I've got documents 4 and 5. So what are the things that bind documents 4 and 5? Colonists asserting rights and Enlightenment ideas. So what I want to say here is that I'm going to transition, right? So in addition to the resistance of tax policies, British colonists began asserting their rights as began. I want to begin utilizing Enlightenment ideas in order to advocate for independence. Okay, so in addition to resistance tax laws, okay. So now I want to introduce my document. In document 4, I'll say Samuel Adams in the rights of, actually I don't want to do that. Samuel Adams claims that due to their status as Englishmen, they deserve a right to voice in government, right? So, okay. He explicitly claims that, let's see, the first fundamental natural law is that societies have a fundamental societies require, or have the first fundamental natural law, which is to be able to protect their own society. So, even though he is arguing for colonist rights as Britons, as British citizens, he is utilizing the theories of natural rights in from philosophers like John Locke. Even though philosophers like what? Even though okay. So I'm using another piece of outside information here, and so then I made the connection to the Enlightenment, and then I have the last document. So also, I can say similarly, Thomas Paine. Actually, I didn't. Thomas claim I was decided. Okay, I'm going to put my little reference to document. This is document 4. So, Thomas Paine makes general claims about the absurdity of hereditary power and how it is not based on reason, right? With this argument, he is generally claiming, I said general claims, he is overall stating that kings like the colonists, king of England is not saying that kings like the constitution is not the best form of government. He's advocating for the separation of the colonies in order to establish an independent nation. Okay, so this is purpose. This connects back to purpose. Okay, so now what I'll finally do is, let's see, I got all the 4 documents that I wanted to use. So in conclusion, the combination of both the Enlightenment ideas and resistance to taxation fomented, good word, colonial rebellion. Okay, now is the next step, is the complexity point. This is the most difficult one, but what I've advocated for you guys to do is to press the fast forward button, right? How does this play out? What does this do, right? So now, if I ask you to think about, well, this Enlightenment ideas and about concerns over taxation, what plays out in the next 20 years? Couple things, right? So here's what pops out for me is that so after a successful rebellion against the British, the colony, the now United States, attempt to administer their own government, given their repugnance for taxation. This ultimately led to a government in the Articles of Confederation, which lacked the power to tax, to effectively tax the states. Okay, so I can say something that's, so despite the animating movements despite the animating movements, the convincing arguments against British colonial rule. I could have said like successful arguments, but against British colonial rule, it ultimately, I said ultimately already, it inevitably led to a dramatic weakness of the new administration. And that's so, and so the other thing that I could do if I wanted to talk about Enlightenment ideals, I could see that if we could talk about how the First Amendment enshrines particular rights, or the Bill of Rights enshrines particular rights to the citizens. So given their propensity for Enlightenment ideas, that everyone is entitled to the rights of that have these human rights that the government is there to protect. They created the Bill of Rights. So other connections is that uh, colonial so it's a colonial resistance against British. So that's where I'd leave it, because then if I feel like if I go too far into the Washington administration or beyond that, I feel like it's going to become a little bit ahistorical, or it's not going to be able to provide a good matchup, right? So let's go back to the rubric, right? Let's go to my rubric. Let me score myself and see if I gave myself the points. So this is my contextualization. This is my contextualization. I'm laying the stepping stones toward it. This is my thesis. I'm using the content of 4 documents, right? I use the 2, 3, 4, and Thomas Payment based in document 5. I forgot to cite that there. It's helpful. Using 4 documents. Evidence beyond found in the documents. So I talked about the homespun movement. Okay, and I talked about John Locke, right? For one document, explain how the point of view, purpose, or historical is relevant to the audience. So I talked about a salutary neglect that took place before the war. And let's see. Let's see here. Oh, I did use he is advocating for the separation of colonies in order to establish an independent nation, right? So that's going to be the purpose of the document. Yeah. So it's always good to pepper in more if you can, especially if you, a good one to do is to say if you have an audience, you can tie in an audience to a purpose, right? Because they're going to talk to somebody, but who does you want to talk to? And then I have, complex understanding of the historical development, focus and corroborate, qualify, modify an argument. So if you look over here, let's see, explain the nuance of an issue, analyzing multiple variables, explaining with similarity and difference, continuity and change, or cause and effect, relevant or insightful connections within or across periods. So this is what I went for. This is the fast forward. Okay. All right. So I hope this video helped you on the comments. I hope this video explained out how to approach the DBQ using the 5 documents. Again, it takes, you guys have the writing skills, you have that. What I need you guys to develop is the historical skills, the historical content knowledge, and then apply that into the documents. And you notice that, like, when I was in the documents, I was kind of like, I had to put them in categories, right? So I made a decision, right? I said that, I was going to put, documents 4 and document, 3 or something, right? Or document 2, but I didn't want to use document 2 for 2 different purposes. So I had to reframe the way that I'm arguing. And so notice that I used, like, before I went into this DBQ, I already had ideas, right? So that's going to be foundational. And then the next thing that I think is, like, really crucial is connecting the documents together and putting them in conversation with one another, just so now that you have all the parts. All right, so I'm done with this, and I hope this was helpful. And thank you guys for sticking around in this super long video. Now I have to figure out how to turn this thing off. Go back to Chrome. Okay. So I will see everybody soon, but this is going to be this is going to be something we're going to consistently work on, and I think that as we look at, I think it's going to be actually helpful to have you guys work on the LEQ, which is a long essay question, which is essentially a DBQ without documents. So there's no crutch, right? There's nothing there for you to. You just have to come up with historical evidence on your own and articulate that in an essay, right? So we're going to practice that coming soon, but know that this is going to be these are crucial skills for us. Okay, thank you guys.